The Star Wars sequels are, in the main, met with apathy or hate by the fandom, and it's mainly to Rey, the protagonist of this unloved trilogy, that a lot of the ire is directed, with the accusation that she's a Mary Sue, an over-idealised female character without any flaws. In one of my deconstruction videos, I went a step further to say that her fundamental problem is that she's an action hero in a Jedi's robe, a one-dimensional, near untouchable character, more at home in an 80s action movie than a Jedi torn between the light and the dark side of the Force. But while the data and observations support this conclusion about Rey, it completely overlooked another flaw, one as fundamental and damaging to the enjoyment of these movies, and that is the villain of Kylo Ren. Kylo is a paradoxical villain of Star Wars and wider movie history. All the ingredients were there for a villain of our time: the acting prowess of Adam Driver and the legacy of Darth Vader. But by the end of the sequels, what we had was a vanilla villain. One that we see in this new data deconstruction is both too present and part of the scenery, and one we less fear than wonder why he's there at all. So strap yourselves in, my dear viewers, for another Datatainer deconstruction of the Star Wars sequels, with this time our focal point being the villain problem. And to do this, we will compare Kylo to another villain in Star Wars, his grandfather Darth Vader. First, let's examine in our deconstruction Kylo's screen time in the sequel movies, and how they compare to Vader. Most great villains are not on screen that much. The movie is often not about them, and when they come in, they're there to test the hero, or to make us rethink what we thought was the heart of the matter. If they're on screen all the time, they're more just one of the gang, a supporting cast member that moves the story along. In the deconstruction, we see that Kylo appears in scenes representing a total runtime of 116 minutes, whereas Vader appears for 75 minutes. That's proportionately 35% more time for Kylo on screen than Vader. And on reflection, it makes sense, and it feels like Kylo is never really far away from the story. Like when he constantly contacts Rey via the Force. At times he feels more like a jilted boyfriend obsessing over Rey and chasing her across the galaxy than an adversary to be feared. And to that point, another trait of a villain is that they are often independent and have agency in the story. They plot, they scheme, they connive, and in doing so they affect the story. They are not just there as an adversary or foil for the hero. So in this context, it's interesting that out of 67 scenes Kylo appears in, he shares the screen with Rey in 35, or just over half. By comparison, Vader shares the screen with Luke in only 16, or a quarter of the scenes. And in these data comparisons, we see something perhaps we didn't see before, that in the main Kylo becomes a mere challenge or companion for Rey, rather than a villain or adversary in his own right. And this is all the more tragic because of how well he starts off in The Force Awakens, killing San Tekka, holding blaster bolts in midair, and then ordering the slaughter of a bunch of innocent villagers. I'd go out on a limb to say that it's an even better entrance than Vader himself in A New Hope. And he continues in a good vein, mind-probing Poe, controlling Rey, and toying with her in the forest. But it's the point from which Rey reads his mind on his ship and she stares him down that things start to unravel. This is the moment it goes wrong for Kylo, and the story as a whole. From this moment, he's no longer a Sith Force user to be feared because we see at this point he can be beaten. And of course he's beaten again by Rey in their lightsaber duel before the first movie has even ended. And when we step back and look at the moments of combat Kylo is involved in, we see that he emerges as the loser significantly more than Vader, in 6 out of 18 occasions versus only 1 out of 6 for Vader, with Vader's only loss coming from Luke in the throne room in Return of the Jedi. And it's here we see the real difficulty with Kylo. He cannot be a serious villain without the expectation he is more powerful than those around him. That it's only by evolving and getting stronger that the hero can overcome him. If the hero beats him every time, he's just there to help move the story along. And even in Kylo's redemption there is a problem. Because for Kylo, his redemption was a set of steps throughout the trilogy that became somewhat telegraphed to the audience after the first step. And that step comes quite early for Kylo in The Last Jedi, where he killed Snoke. After this, he took a slight step back, deciding he wants to be the leader of the First Order with Rey at his side, only to then undecide that in The Rise of Skywalker when he turns back to the light as Ben Solo. So now let's compare this to Vader. In The Empire Strikes Back, when Palpatine tells him Luke is Anakin Skywalker's offspring, he immediately suggests to turn him to the dark side. And when he beats Luke in their lightsaber duel on Cloud City and offers him the chance to join him to rule the galaxy, I have to think he was still considering Luke as a pawn, a mere asset in his quest for power. It's only in their conversation on the bridge that things begin to turn, when Luke begs Vader to turn back to the light and we see that moment of him alone. Here we don't see his doubt, but we feel something within him behind the mask, and it's subtle enough that it's only really on repeat watching after you see his redemption in the final scenes that you realise what was going on. So it's back to Kylo that we see the villain problem for the sequels, one who started out well with menace, power and a lack of mercy, to only quickly and frequently become the target practice for the hero to demonstrate her skills and power, and even in his redemption, he completes her story rather than his own. And I for one think it's such a shame it turned out this way. But with an actor of Adam Driver's calibre, they could have done so much more. And we saw recently in an interview with Driver himself that there was originally a plan for Kylo to be a much darker, more evil character, one less on a path to redemption and more on a path to the dark side oblivion. And that would have been one of Star Wars' great villains. I thank you for watching this Datatainer deconstruction video. If you like what you saw, please drop a like for the video, and please let me know what you think in the comments. And remember, in the way of data and observation, we can save entertainment.
I'm sure you are.